you! No.
I was having breakfast at Miller's Diner when this woman grabbed me by my hair and yanked me up from my seat. The slap that followed echoed through the entire restaurant. She called me trash, said I didn't belong there. What she didn't know? My husband Cameron runs Homeland Security. Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest power. If you've ever been underestimated or judged by your appearance, this story is for you. Stay until the end because karma has a beautiful way of coming full circle. And if you enjoy stories about justice and standing up for what's right, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't regret it. Let me take you back to that Tuesday morning. It was one of those perfectly ordinary days that you never expect will change everything. I'm Daphne, and I've never been the kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room. I don't wear designer clothes or carry expensive handbags. Most days you'll find me in jeans and a comfortable sweater, my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, maybe a touch of lip gloss if I remember. I'm just normal, average, the kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second glance. And honestly, I like it that way. My husband Cameron has one of the most high-pressure jobs in the country. He's the director of Homeland Security, which means he's constantly in the spotlight, constantly being watched, constantly dealing with threats and crises that would make most people's heads spin. When he comes home, he needs peace. He needs normal. He needs a wife who doesn't add to the chaos of his world. So I've always kept our private life exactly that, private. That morning, I'd decided to treat myself to breakfast at Miller's Diner. It's this little place on Maple Street that's been around for 30 years. The booths have that worn-in comfort, the coffee is always hot, and the pancakes taste like my grandmother used to make. I'd been going there every Tuesday for the past 6 months, always sitting in the same booth by the window where the morning sun streams in just right. When I walked in that morning, wearing my cream-colored sweater and my favorite jeans, Jenny the waitress greeted me with her usual warm smile. "Morning, Daphne. Your usual spot is ready for you." I loved that about Miller's. They made everyone feel like family. I slid into my booth, ordered my regular stack of buttermilk pancakes and a coffee, and settled in with a book I'd been reading. Just a perfect, peaceful Tuesday morning. The diner had its usual crowd, construction workers grabbing breakfast before their shift, a few elderly couples who'd probably been coming here since it opened, some students from the community college studying over coffee. Everyone was relaxed, chatting quietly, enjoying their morning. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when the atmosphere changed. The door swung open, and in walked Veronica Sterling. I didn't know her name then, but I knew the type. She swept in like she owned the place, wearing a pristine white designer dress that probably cost more than my car payment, dripping in gold jewelry that caught the light with every movement. Her perfectly styled blonde hair didn't have a strand out of place, and her makeup looked like it had been applied by a professional. 3 people followed behind her, 2 women who seemed to be friends or assistants, and a man in an expensive suit who might have been her lawyer or business partner. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. Even the clatter of dishes from the kitchen seemed to quiet down. I watched from my booth as heads turned, as people suddenly became very interested in their plates. There was something about the way she carried herself, this invisible force field of arrogance and entitlement that made everyone around her shrink back. She stopped in the middle of the diner, surveying the room like a queen inspecting her kingdom. And then her eyes landed on my booth, my quiet, sunny, perfect little spot by the window. Her eyes narrowed, and she started walking directly toward me. My heart did a little flip, but I told myself I was being paranoid. She couldn't possibly want my table. There were plenty of other empty booths, but she stopped right at my table, looking down at me with an expression of cold displeasure. "You're in my seat," she said. "Not a question, not a request. A statement of fact, like I'd somehow stolen something that belonged to her." I looked up at her, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "This is my table. I always sit here. You need to move." I glanced around. There were at least 4 other empty booths visible from where I sat. The diner wasn't even half full. "I'm actually in the middle of my breakfast," I said politely, trying to keep my voice friendly. But there are several other nice tables available. I think that booth over there also has a nice view. Her face hardened. I don't think you understand. I'm Veronica Sterling. I own half the commercial real estate in this town. When I want something, people give it to me. So get up and move. Now. The way she said it, like I was some kind of insect that needed to be brushed aside, made my blood run a little hot. But Cameron had always taught me that the people who shout the loudest are usually the most insecure. Real power doesn't need to announce itself, so I kept my voice calm and steady. I'm sure you're very important, but I was here first, and I'd like to finish my breakfast. I'm not moving. I watched her face turn an interesting shade of pink. Her friends behind her exchanged nervous glances. The man in the suit put a hand on her arm as if to calm her down, but she shrugged him off violently. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Her voice was rising now, sharp and cutting through the quiet diner. Look at you. You're wearing a $15 sweater and sitting here like you belong. You're nobody. You're nothing. This is a place for people with class, with money, with importance, not for poor trash like you. The entire diner had gone completely silent. I could feel every eye on us. Jenny was frozen halfway between the kitchen and another table, coffee pot in hand. My pancakes were getting cold on the plate in front of me, but I suddenly wasn't hungry anymore. I was embarrassed, yes, but more than that, I was angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger, the cold, steady kind that makes you very, very quiet. I'm not going anywhere, I said softly. Please leave me alone. That's when everything happened so fast. One moment she was standing there, her face twisted in rage, and the next moment she lunged forward. Her perfectly manicured hand tangled in my hair, and she yanked, hard. The pain was immediate and shocking. She pulled me up from my seat by my hair, my book and coffee cup clattering to the table. I grabbed at her wrist instinctively, trying to ease the pressure on my scalp, and then her other hand came across my face in a slap so hard that my head snapped to the side. The sound echoed through the diner like a gunshot. For a moment, everything was still. My cheek was on fire, my scalp burning where she'd torn at my hair. I could taste blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. My eyes were watering from the pain, and my hair had come loose from its ponytail, falling messily around my face. Jenny dropped the coffee pot. It shattered on the floor, hot coffee spreading across the tiles, but nobody moved to clean it up. Everyone was staring at us, frozen in shock. I stood there, one hand on my burning cheek, the other trying to smooth down my hair, and I looked at Veronica Sterling. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving, but she had this triumphant look on her face like she'd just won something. That's what happens when trash doesn't know its place, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Then she looked around the diner, addressing everyone. Does anyone else want to challenge me? Do you know who I am? I own the building that houses the mayor's office. The police chief plays golf with my husband every Sunday. I could buy this pathetic little diner and shut it down tomorrow if I wanted to. So, if any of you are thinking about being heroes, think very carefully. Harold, the diner's manager, had come rushing out from the kitchen. He was a good man, in his 50s, who'd worked at Miller's for 20 years. I could see him struggling with what to do, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly. Ms. Sterling, he started, his voice uncertain. I think maybe we should all just calm down. Calm down? She whirled on him. Are you telling me to calm down? Do you want to keep your job, Harold? Because I can make one phone call and have this health department crawling all over this place. I wonder how many violations they'd find. Harold's face went even paler. He looked at me with an expression of helpless apology. He had a family, a mortgage. I understood. This woman had just physically assaulted me in front of a dozen witnesses, and everyone was too afraid to do anything about it. I took a shaky breath, tasting copper in my mouth, my cheek throbbing. It's okay, Harold, I said quietly. Can I just have my check, please? I could see relief flood his face, mixed with shame. Jenny was crying quietly as she rang up my bill, her hands trembling. I paid in cash, leaving her a large tip because none of this was her fault. Veronica watched me with a smug smile, her arms crossed over her chest. As I gathered my things, my book, my purse, my dignity, she leaned close to me. "Remember this the next time you think you can sit wherever you want," she whispered. "People like you need to learn your place." I walked out of that diner with my head held high, even though everything in me wanted to collapse. My cheek was already swelling, and I could feel my hair still disheveled from where she'd grabbed me. I got to my car in the parking lot, sat in the driver's seat, and let myself shake for a minute. Then I pulled out my phone and called my husband. "Hey, sweetheart," Cameron answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. I could hear papers rustling in the background. He was probably in his office, dealing with briefings and reports and all the weight of national security. "What's up?" "I thought you were having your dinner morning." "I was," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Honey, can you meet me at Miller's Diner?" Something happened. There was a pause. Cameron knows me well enough to hear what I'm not saying. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay. Can you come?" "I'm on my way." "Stay there." I hung up and sat in my car, watching the diner through my windshield. Through the window, I could see Veronica had taken my booth. She was sitting there like a queen on a throne, laughing with her friends, completely unconcerned about what she'd just done. Why would she be concerned? She'd made it clear that she was untouchable, that she owned people, that there would be no consequences for someone like her. 15 minutes later, a dark SUV pulled into the parking lot. It was unmarked, nothing that would draw attention, but I knew it immediately. Cameron stepped out wearing casual clothes, a gray polo shirt and khaki pants. He'd probably been in his office in a suit and tie 30 minutes ago, but he always kept a change of clothes there for emergencies. To anyone else, he looked like a regular guy, maybe someone's dad picking up lunch. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the sharp focus in his eyes as they immediately found me in the car. He was at my door in seconds, pulling it open. "Daphne." His voice was gentle, but his eyes were hard as they took in my face, the red handprint on my cheek that was already darkening to a bruise, my messed-up hair, my swollen lip. I watched his jaw clench, a muscle ticking in his cheek. "Who did this to you?" "She's inside. Cameron, Tell me what happened, all of it." So I did. I told him about Veronica demanding my seat, about the insults, about how she'd grabbed my hair and yanked me out of my booth before slapping me. I told him about her threats to everyone in the diner, about how she'd made it clear that she was above consequences, and I watched my husband's expression grow colder and more dangerous with every word. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. "Come on," he said. "Let's go inside." We walked into the diner together, and I saw Jenny's eyes go wide when she saw us. Harold looked like he might faint, but Cameron just walked calmly to my booth, where Veronica was still holding court, gesturing dramatically as she told some story to her entourage. She didn't even notice us approaching until Cameron was standing right beside the table. "Excuse me," he said politely. "You're in my wife's seat." Veronica looked up at him with an expression of irritation that quickly morphed into disdain. She looked him up and down, taking in his casual clothes, his unremarkable appearance. "And who exactly are you supposed to be? Her boyfriend? Her handler?" She laughed, and her friends laughed with her. "Look, why don't you both just run along? I've had enough of dealing with people who don't understand how the world works." Cameron didn't respond to her. Instead, he turned to me, his hand gentle on my elbow. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" His voice was soft, concerned, completely focused on me as if Veronica didn't exist. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice shook a little. Jenny had appeared at Cameron's elbow, her face tear-stained. "Sir, I saw everything. She grabbed Daphne by her hair and pulled her up from the table, and then she hit her. Hard. We all saw it, but Ms. Sterling said she'd—" "It's okay, Jenny," Cameron said gently. "Why don't you tell me exactly what happened?" As Jenny began to explain, her voice gaining strength, other customers started speaking up too. An elderly man from a nearby booth said he'd recorded the whole thing on his phone. A woman with 2 young children said she'd been about to call the police, but Veronica had threatened her. Everyone had been too afraid to act, but now, with someone finally listening, the dam broke. Veronica's confident expression was starting to crack. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "I don't know who you think you are, but you're making a big mistake. I'm Veronica Sterling. My family has connections all over this state. I can have you arrested for harassment. Can you?" Cameron interrupted, his voice still calm, but carrying an edge now. "You can have me arrested? That's interesting." He turned to Veronica fully for the first time, and I saw her actually flinch a little at the look in his eyes. "Tell me, Ms. Sterling, do your connections extend to federal law enforcement? Because assault is a serious crime, and when the victim is the spouse of a federal official, it becomes even more serious." Veronica laughed, but it sounded uncertain. "Federal official? What are you, some kind of FBI agent? That's the best intimidation tactic you could come up with?" Cameron reached into his pocket and pulled out his credentials. He held them up so Veronica could see. "Cameron Hart, Director of Homeland Security." The color drained from Veronica's face so fast I thought she might pass out. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. Her friends had gone completely still. The man in the expensive suit had pulled out his phone and was frantically typing, probably looking up whether what Cameron said was true. Around the diner I heard gasps. Harold's face went from pale to almost gray. Jenny's hand flew to her mouth. The elderly man who'd recorded everything on his phone suddenly looked at his device like it contained nuclear launch codes. You can't be," Veronica stammered, but her lawyer or assistant or whatever he was had pulled up something on his phone and showed it to her. I saw her look at the screen, then back at Cameron, then at me. Full recognition and horror dawning on her face. Cameron's phone was already out. "This is Director Hart. I need a local police unit and 2 agents from the field office at Miller's Diner on Maple Street. We have an assault case that needs immediate attention." He paused. "Yes, I'm aware that's unusual. The assault victim is my wife." Veronica found her voice. Wait, please. There's been a misunderstanding. She didn't tell me who she was." Cameron's eyes were ice. "So you only assault people when you think they can't fight back? When you think there won't be consequences?" "No, yes, Veronica was spiraling now, her perfect composure completely shattered. "Please, we can work this out. I'll pay for any medical bills. I'll apologize. Your lawyer can meet you at the police station," Cameron said flatly. "You grabbed my wife by her hair, pulled her from her seat, and struck her across the face, in front of a dozen witnesses. That's assault and battery. The fact that you then threatened every witness to silence them makes it even worse." 2 police cars pulled up outside, followed shortly by an unmarked vehicle. Officers came in, along with 2 agents in plain clothes who I recognized as part of Cameron's security detail. The police chief himself appeared about 10 minutes later, his face grave. "Director Hart," he said, offering his hand to Cameron. Then he looked at me, at my bruised face, and his expression hardened. He turned to Veronica. "Miss Sterling, I'm going to need you to come with us." "Chief Morrison, please." Veronica's voice was desperate now. "We play golf together. Our families—" "I don't care if we're best friends," Chief Morrison said firmly. "You assaulted someone, multiple witnesses, video evidence. You're under arrest." As they read Veronica her rights and led her out in handcuffs, her white designer dress somehow looking less pristine now, her gold jewelry looking more like chains, I felt Cameron's arm around my shoulders. He was being careful not to touch my bruised cheek, but his presence was solid and reassuring. The lawyer, it turned out he was indeed her lawyer, tried to stop to talk to Cameron, to negotiate, to make deals. But Cameron just shook his head. "You should have stopped your client before she assaulted someone. Now you get to represent her in federal court." After everyone had given their statements and the police and agents had left, the diner was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Not fearful, but almost relieved, like a weight had been lifted. Harold approached us cautiously. "Director Hart, Mrs. Hart, I am so sorry. I should have stopped her. I should have called the police immediately. You were protecting your business and your employees, Cameron said, not unkindly. She made threats, and you had reason to believe she could carry them out. I understand, but I hope you understand that nobody, no matter how much money or power they think they have, has the right to hurt people. Jenny brought me ice wrapped in a clean towel for my cheek. Her hands were still shaking, but she was smiling. I can't believe all this time you were married to, and you're just so normal. You're just Daphne. I managed a smile even though it hurt. I'm still just Daphne. This doesn't change that, but of course it did change things. By the next morning, the video of Veronica assaulting me had gone viral. People were outraged, not just because she'd hit someone, but because of what she'd said, the way she'd acted, her assumption that money and connections put her above the law. The news picked up the story. Real estate mogul arrested after assaulting Homeland Security Director's wife was trending everywhere. What I hadn't expected was the flood of other people coming forward. Jenny called me 2 days later, her voice excited. Daphne, you won't believe this. 5 other business owners in town have filed complaints against Veronica. She's been threatening people for years, threatening to buy their buildings and evict them, threatening to ruin their businesses if they didn't give her what she wanted. Everyone was too scared to speak up before, but now. She trailed off and I could hear the smile in her voice. Now they're not scared anymore. The federal investigation that Cameron's office launched uncovered even more: tax fraud, bribing local officials, using her real estate holdings to threaten and extort. The woman who'd thought she was untouchable was finding out that nobody really is. 3 weeks later, I went back to Miller's Diner for my Tuesday breakfast. I walked in wearing jeans and a comfortable sweater, a pale yellow one this time, my hair in its usual simple ponytail. The booth by the window was empty, waiting for me like it always had been. Jenny brought my coffee with a grin. Your usual spot, Daphne. I slid into the booth and looked around. The diner felt different now, lighter somehow. People were laughing more freely. Harold had put up a sign behind the register, all customers treated with respect, no exceptions. It made me smile. As I waited for my pancakes, I thought about that day, about Veronica's face when she realized who she'd messed with, about the feeling of Cameron's arm around my shoulders, solid and protective, about the look in Harold's eyes when he realized he didn't have to be afraid anymore. But mostly, I thought about the lesson in all of this. It would be easy to say the moral is, don't judge a book by its cover, or be careful who you mess with. And sure, those things are true. Veronica had looked at me in my simple clothes and average appearance and decided I was nothing. She'd been wrong about that in the most spectacular way possible. But the real lesson isn't about me being married to someone powerful. The real lesson is that Veronica should never have treated anyone that way, regardless of who they were married to or what connections they had. The elderly man in the corner booth deserved respect. Jenny deserved respect. Harold deserved to run his business without fear. Everyone in that diner deserved to eat their breakfast in peace. Power isn't about designer dresses and gold jewelry and threatening people. Real power is quiet. It's knowing who you are and not needing to prove it to anyone. It's treating people with kindness not because of what they can do for you, but because it's the right thing to do. Cameron is one of the most powerful people in the country, but he still holds the door open for strangers. He still says please and thank you to waitstaff. He still treats everyone he meets with basic human decency. That's the kind of power that matters. My face healed. The bruise faded. My hair grew back where she'd torn it. But the memory of that day stayed with me, not as a trauma, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones you should never underestimate, that cruelty always has consequences, even if they don't come immediately, that communities are stronger when people stand together instead of cowering in fear. Veronica Sterling is facing multiple charges now. Her real estate empire is crumbling. The people she terrorized for years are finally free. And me? I'm still just Daphne, still having my Tuesday pancakes at Miller's Diner, still reading my book in the booth by the window where the morning sun streams in just right. The only difference is, now everyone knows that quiet power is still power. So remember, the next time you think about treating someone poorly because they look ordinary, think twice. You never know who they are or who they know. But more importantly, treat people with respect because it's the right thing to do, not because of who they might be. If this story taught you something, smash that like button and subscribe for more real-life justice stories. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated? I read every single one. Until next time, remember, quiet power is still power.